gentlemen, the show is about to start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'ma get it. This ain't a front, glory to G-O-D. It's what you could do with a mustard seed. It's what you could do when you start to believe. Take fear and you cast it inside of the sea. 100% out of me, cause he gave it all on the T when he let it bleed. So what is you saying to me? You just insecure about the love that turned into a I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I just know that I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it.
Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Oram, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. How's everybody doing tonight? How is everyone tonight? I got to tell you guys, I'm super excited about tonight's episode. I've been promising y'all that we're going to bring the fire. Well, tonight we're going to bring the fire. I'm excited about this. But before I get into that, let me just kind of really thank all of you who consistently join us on a weekly basis. I tell you every week, and I sincerely mean this, for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, thank you so much for tuning in to the Deep Dive Podcast. I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge the fact that you're taking your time out of your busy schedule to support the podcast, whether you tuning in live or whether you listening to this as a recording. But I tell you, we appreciate your support more than you know. And then for all of our loyal listeners who's been around for all 5 seasons now, I can't believe we're already in season 5. But thank you guys so much for your support. Believe it or not, I read all of the emails and the Facebook group information. And as a matter of fact, we got a super fan that I said I wanted to acknowledge tonight. This is a young lady from Denmark. I wrote the name down. Her name is Sophie Jensen. She's from Denmark. Now, the reason I wanted to highlight her as a super fan, it's after 1 a.m. in Denmark. And if I got my numbers correct, they are actually doing a live listening party, if you will, for the Deep Dive Podcast, doing something with university there. So I appreciate you, Sophie. I appreciate all of our listeners in Denmark and all over the world. As most of you know, the podcast originates in over 172 countries around the world. And we're just excited to bring a message of empowerment, bring a message of elevation, bring a message of opportunity. That's what it is that we do. That's why we're so excited about the Deep Dive Podcast. So thank all of our listeners, wherever you are in the world. Now, I told you guys, I've been promising you a special guest to kick off season 5. And I know we've been, talking about so many things in terms of empowerment over this season. And, every week I asked the group, I call them the squad. I asked the squad, what is it that you want to hear this week? And you know what? One common denominator that we keep getting bits and pieces of is just what's going on around the world, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Hence the title of this episode, The State of the World. And I really wanted to bring a gentleman to the forefront of our podcast because this guy is absolutely the best when it comes to articulating what's going on around the world. He is very, very knowledgeable in everything that he has actually done. In fact, he is a developmental consultant. And I know people like, well, what is a developmental consultant? Well, bottom line is this is a guy, when you have challenges, whether it's business challenges, whether it's personal challenges, that can give you bits of information in terms of how to navigate yourself, how to navigate life to succeed at the highest level, whether that's business, whether that's personal, whatever it may be, because he's proficient at actually coaching middle managers. He's proficient at coaching coaches. He's proficient at really kind of diving into what a person's needs are in terms of getting the best out of themselves, getting the best out of their companies, so forth and so on. So he originally hails from New Orleans, Louisiana, always been into sports, at least two sports, all of his life. He's, and that whole sports notion has really kind of positioned him to just understand what it means to be great. As he would say, and he'll tell you more about this, it separates what makes the great great and what makes a team horrible or bad or whatever the case may be. We'll get a little bit more into that, but I really want you, if you're taking notes, I really want you to kind of hone in on some of the fine details of what this guy has to offer, because again, there's no one better to share with you how we get from where we are to where we need to be. And I think the first offense in terms of getting that done is recognizing what the state of the world is right now. So without further ado, I know you guys have been waiting, tiptoe anticipation. We've been promoting this, we've been waiting on it. Let's bring to the forefront of the Deep Dive podcast none other than my boy Vincent. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I appreciate that magnificent intro. Extremely excited to be able to share this time with you. You talked about this idea, about what to say, what to think about, and I was getting my notes together, getting ready, had a lot of brainstorming, trying to make sure I can articulate the point. So I'm excited and ready to go.
That's good, man. Like I said, there's nobody better to touch on this topic than you are. And to be honest with you, just from my perspective, looking at the state of the world, I've been kind of like, ever since the election, I've been a bit nonchalant in terms of what's going on, because it's like enough already for me. This is just my own personal thing. It's just like enough. You turn left, you got drama. You turn right, you got drama. And I wanted to talk about it on the podcast, but I'm not the best person to talk about it. And the reason why is because I'm too emotional. I might say something that I don't need to say. I've had people tell me to count to 10. I've had people send these emails, like, some of them nasty emails. So I'm not the best person to really kind of touch on this topic, because like I said, it evokes so much emotion in me. But just asking you as a professional, how would you really describe the current state of global leadership? What's going on with the leadership around the world? How would you articulate that?
I mean, I think the leadership that it's some would call it poor, and then others would say it's exactly what we need in the moment. And I think the leadership, you're seeing a shift as far as the type of leaders that are acceptable. And what you're seeing sometimes in some areas is leaders that don't necessarily have the previous character traits that we were accustomed to seeing. It's become acceptable to where people are willing to vote for that and get momentum behind those types of leaders. And the thing about it is, it's not the first time in history that this has happened. Like when you go back in history, we've seen this before. But it is probably the first time in recent history where, for a few generations of people that they've seen these types of leaders kind of gain in popularity. And so the thing about it, though, is I think it's a knee-jerk reaction in some instances to things that have swung too far in one way and now are swinging further to another direction. And one of the examples I could give about this is, right after the election happened, I had to speak to a men's group that I lead. And what I wanted to do was talk about politics without being political. And so, that's difficult. But the conversation that I brought up was the emotion of what everybody in this situation felt. And so if you're in the United States, Donald Trump, or just anywhere in the world, just Donald Trump won the election. He's a Republican. Kamala Harris, she lost. She's a Democrat. And the picture that I was painting was the emotion of both sides in that moment. And part of it was, I was saying, like some people were like, well, how could you vote for Donald Trump? And I thought about it and I said, some of the things that Donald Trump stood on was like bringing back like male dominance. And he was like catering to that audience about being a dominant male, when a lot of times in America, you could have felt like the dominant male had been trampled on and being rejected. And so that could register the emotion to say, I got to vote for him because he's going to make it okay to be a masculine, beat my chest man again. And so you can see where that could register with a lot of people. And then on the flip side of it, if you were, let's say you were Kamala Harris and you were like a minority woman, you felt like everything you had been told was a lie because you had every piece of qualification that was available. If you were to
Right.
look at past presidents' steps going into the White House, she had taken each one of those steps and she was rejected by America. And so if you were a minority female, you felt rejected by America as well. And so the point that I was trying to get was not for us to be able to choose sides, but for us to be able to have this understanding of what people are feeling and what's going on and what's the motivation driving decisions and driving people's behavior. And so that's kind of an example of what, right after the election, literally the week after, I was having this discussion and everything was really like hot and heated. I think emotionally, I still had my emotions going, which kind of made it a little easier for me to sit back and start to think about, why would you vote for this person? Why would you not vote for this person? And like, why did the qualities and characteristics of a resume not matter all of a sudden? It's like what had to happen in the world for that for what I would consider and what you probably would consider the logic of the resume to not be accepted for something that logically fit for something that was illogical to be overly accepted. So
Right.
that's the kind of thing I was trying to say, like, how can I understand this thinking? Because it wasn't going to do me any benefit to be too upset or get too in the dumps. It was going to do me much better benefit to be able to understand the logic and how people were feeling from the emotional perspective, what drove them to make those decisions and choices, even though they logically didn't make any sense to me personally.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I can see that, logically, but
Right.
your boy. I'm like,
Emotion.
yeah, all that's good. It sounds good, but your boy's like, look, I ain't trying to hear it. But you know what? I think most people, this is my opinion. I think most people voted their ideology, their pocketbook, their values. Because when you look at it, we've become such a tribal country. For those of you who may be listening in other countries, I'm talking about in particular, let's say the North American continent. We've become so tribal that you said something that's interesting that, people are just not listening to each other. Everybody's just in their tribal state, if you will. And I think a lot of people just, for example, I'll use myself for an example. When I talk about voting my values, my ideologies, how I think and feel, I feel strongly about being able to feed, kids through whether it's food stamps or I think they call it EBT now, something, whatever they call it. But, to be able to feed the kids or to be able to do this. In other words, I have a more of a humanitarian type spirit where I'm not so much concerned with all of these wealthy people making more money. I'm more concerned with the people who can't eat getting an opportunity to eat, right? But then there's a different ideology where people out there who are multimillionaires and billionaires, and they like, look, we're in a economic society. We need to make as much money as we possibly can. Period. That to me is just a difference in ideologies, and I think people kind of voted along those lines. Those they call them the kitchen table type issues. Can you pay your bills, so forth and so on. But you said something else that kind of resonated with me, and I just kind of wanted to get a bit more clarity for the audience. You said you wanted to talk to the guys about politics without being political. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean when you say talk about politics without being political?
Yeah, so to talk about politics without being political, first off, is extremely difficult. Uh,
Okay.
the next piece about it is when you talk about politics without necessarily being political, you really want to try to focus on, what's actually being said by the candidates and
Hmm.
not necessarily by the pundits around the candidates.
Hmm.
And so in that portion of it, you talk about the what's actually being said, and then you try to have discussion based around the ideals of what's actually being said. And so what you're trying to do is not get your personal version of your ideology in the way of understanding the thinking and the benefits of what's going to work and what could potentially not work. Because really, when you look at political ideas and political plans, they're literally supposed to be, most of the time, thought of as solutions to fix things. And you have usually, we have two sets of ideas to fix something, but we just disagree on how to get it done. So we usually want to have the same thing. In most instances, we want to accomplish the same things. We just have far different opposing views on how to get them done. And so if you can try to keep the discussion about the ideas versus like just the emotion behind it. And so in other words, talk about, let's throw a solution on the table and let's argue the solution, not the people.
Wow.
And that's something that, it's extremely, extremely difficult. It takes an open mind to do it. And it involves not assassinating the character of the candidates either. Because sometimes we get into these personal issues about, does the candidate believe in my, what would you say, religious beliefs, when it comes to sexuality beliefs, all of these little things that become too personal. If you start siding on that, and it really makes it difficult to kind of talk about like what they call the ideas that are put on the table.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That really makes sense. I'm guilty of a lot of this stuff. It's kind of like you hit me in my face, hit me in my head, because I'm guilty of a lot of this stuff. It's like, this is what I think, this is what I believe. I don't care what you think. You're ugly anyway. So,
so I tell you how I started like understanding this concept and learning this, and it was like, working in corporate America and in a corporate job. Once you get to certain levels of leadership, it's no longer about what you know. Because usually when you first get promoted and you get to certain levels, it's about what you know, right? And then at a certain point, when you're everything for your area, now you sit at the table with the person who knows everything about their area. So in order to get work done, you can't say, well, I know this and I know that. All you do is butt heads. So kind of a philosophy that I used to adopt was, I'm going to take an idea and I'm going to throw it on this table. And the reason why I do a table, because if you can imagine being at like a board meeting or something, right? And we throw something on a table, right? And I'm like, tear that thing apart. Criticize it, do what you will with it. And I would separate myself from it. And even if somebody else had the idea and I wanted to criticize that idea, I would separate them from the idea. And so now, because I said I'm going to separate it, we started being able to say, let's throw this thing out here. And my whole goal was not for me to win, but for us to come up with the best solution. And so I started taking that into other areas.
Yeah, you're such a nice guy. You're such a nice guy. You throwing stuff on the table and giving everybody an opinion and getting everybody's input. I think I got to work on myself, because I'm like throwing it on the table, like, look, this is what you about to do. But in the interest of doing it the right way, you're absolutely right. So I ain't gonna trip. You're right about that. I know we got a lot of people who are listening in all over the world, and just kind of taking our eyes off of the U.S. a little bit. What do you think about what are some of the implications of rising nationalism in different countries? I know that I spoke to one of my buddies today that's he's traveling in Italy right now, on vacation or something. And he was talking about how all of the protests, I didn't even know there were protests and things going on, but there are a lot of protests. By the way, shout out to our listeners in Italy, but protests going on and all of this kind of stuff. So what are some of the, we talk about tribalism and we talk about all of these isms here in America, but what about rising nationalism in different countries? What do you think about that?
Well, I think, because of the media and because of what we can see, it's not uncommon that we as humans feel the same thing, even though we're across the other side of the world and we can't see one another. And it's not uncommon for us to be going through similar things or feeling similar ways. It's kind of like a wave, it starts the current wave starts here and it makes itself all the way around the world. So I mean, that to me isn't uncommon. I think what you see it happening, I can remember like being like really, really young and kind of like watching the news and seeing global events, specifically in Europe at times. And I could remember seeing, similar things happening in different European countries, kind of like a domino effect per se. So to me, I think that's a natural occurrence. One of the things I think that can speed it up, and with this timeline, like everything, I don't know, everything feels faster because of the internet. And I think not just the internet, but the fact that, with social media, we get so much exposure to everything that can happen in real time. And so, you can hear the opinions of one group and another group can be all over the world and be like, yeah, I'm feeling the similar things, and start to build a similar group and start to create a similar movement relatively quickly. So when I think about this stuff, I think about the fact that like people are people. We tend to have the same hierarchy of needs no matter where we are. And then we tend to have the same number of emotions no matter where we are as well. And so you usually can trace it back to similar needs when you see these things happening. I do feel like a copycat, and not necessarily negatively, but the copycat behavior, it can happen at a faster rate than what we've previously seen, simply because of the exposure through social media mainly.
Yeah, we have been seeing that. Now that you mentioned that, you talk about the copycat behavior, and I've never really thought about it until you said it. But then now that I'm thinking about what's going on around the world, you're absolutely right. Man, that's something to kind of chew on a little bit. I mentioned, just briefly in introducing you, just how proficient you are, not just in world events and politics and things of that nature, but you're a super, super smart guy as it relates to money and finances and the economies and all of these things. One of the things that I talked about for many years, in fact, we may have discussed this, I don't know, years ago, but how the world is becoming a cashless society. And keep in mind, guys, when we're talking about the state of the world, we're not just talking about the political state of the world. We're talking about the state of the world in every aspect. And, so politically, economically, socially, so forth and so on. But from a economic or financial standpoint, I talked about there being a cashless society. Do you think we're headed to, this is a two-part question. Do you think we're headed toward a total cashless society? That's the first part. And then the second part is, how do you see AI and this kind of automation, being able to shape the future of economy, jobs, things of that nature? So the cashless society, and how does AI affect all of this, shaping the future of jobs?
Cashless society, I mean, I think we're pretty close as it stands right now. When it starts to ring a bell. The way you pay attention to it is when you walk into businesses and they say, we do not accept cash.
Right.
When you start to see that, then you kind of know we're getting there. When you start to see major enterprises do that, and I think what's going to happen is that because of the card payment systems, and not necessarily have to use Visa and those major payment systems anymore, you've got the Squares of the world, that the smaller entrepreneur can get in on being able to use cards at a cheaper rate than before. So it's going to make it beneficial. There's a cost to use the cards, but then you offset the fact that you're not going to worry about people stealing money from you. So it probably equals out from an entrepreneurial perspective. So when businesses say they don't want to take cash anymore, that's probably the point where you're going to start to see it like really, really go away. Now we'll always have, the side kind of hustle thing where somebody's going to want cash to some degree.
Right.
I think that'll happen. It'll be interesting to see how Bitcoin or any coin can not be regulated, and how you can move money without that being seen. Because I think that's another issue that cash has solved for in the past, is being able to move things without everything being extremely, extremely tracked. But I don't think we go extremely fast, but I think it's going to continue to like fade out to where we use less and less and less and less and less of it.
Right.
And I forgot who has that app. I don't know if it's in China, but I know when Elon Musk was trying to talk about making X, formerly Twitter, be able to have like a payment system within it. I think that's China. I can't remember if it's China or Japan that has it, but I could see something that, from the payment system of being able to move currency between humans in the same quickness that you can with cash. And some people say we got that with like what's that? We have that already, but I think a little bit smoother the way it's an entity that's all kind of in one, where it's tied to you as a person. It's a little bit smoother of a transaction. Right. I think that'll facilitate it as well. Will it go completely away? Probably about 90% away, but I think there'll always be some form of cash laying around as currency. Is for the people who feel like the world's gonna, like, when it goes to end and you need a gas car and no electricity and all that kind of stuff for the preppers. I think there'll be some cash for them.
It's funny that I was at I went to a restaurant, this Jamaican joint in Atlanta, and I went in there and they got me a little jerk chicken, rice and peas, oxtail gravy on the rice. And the lady gonna tell me, she's like, you paying with cash or card? I'm like, me being me, I got my sisters already telling me I got a smart mouth. I'm always, saying something I ain't got this supposed to say. So I'm like, does it make a difference if I'm paying cash, or does it make a difference? Why are you asking me? And then she's like, yes. I'm like, why? It's like, because if you pay with a card, we're gonna charge you 3%. I think it was 3%. Yeah, more. I'm like, look here, you lost your mind. First of all, I'm not paying your merchant fees. If you can't pay your merchant fees, you don't need to be in business. So you got one or two choices. And I can't say what else I said the rest of that conversation, because we are regulated by the FCC. But I did say some things. Look here, sister, you gonna do? I'm not paying your merchant fees. If I gotta pay mine, you gotta pay yours. You know what I'm saying? So,
I have seen that a number of places.
I guess when you look at it from that perspective, cash is going to be around for a little bit, because people like that. They ain't trying to pay those fees. But something else that I was really, really proud of, how you've been able over the years to just really help businesses, whether it's through marketing, digital marketing, just developing concepts. I'm not talking about mom and pop businesses. You've been, of course, this, but I'm sharing it with the audience that, you've been associated with some major companies and helped them, advance from where they were to where they wanted to be through digital marketing, other kind of marketing, and all that other kind of stuff. Can you just kind of, for our business owners, and we have a ton of business owners who are listening in, just kind of give a little bit of insight in terms of not too much, because if they want more, they're gonna have to pay for it in one of these courses. But just give them a little bit of how you were able to manipulate businesses through marketing to get to their ultimate goals.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, when I look at, you look at businesses, they've got a product to sell, right? And some of them have multiple products to sell. And the thing about marketing is everybody has a finite amount of dollars to be able to spend on marketing. Nobody has, well, a couple of people may have an unlimited budget. But so the idea is to figure out how to match people to product. And how can I do that? And there's a multitude of ways of doing it, but one of the things we have to do is figure out what's the best way for you. And for me specifically, I try to get into the motivations of the desires behind the people who would actually use the product in the first place. And so it's an idea of like, okay, like, who are these people? What are their motivations and what are their desires? And then where are they? And so it's trying to find where they are, find who they are, and then figure out their desires and what are we trying to solve for at the emotional level. And so, like, for example, something like a cleaning product, right? Like, people think a cleaning product is about cleaning. It's like, I'm like, no, it's not. A cleaning product is about the finished product. And it's about one, like, how easy can it get done? Like, does it clean easily, or does it take a lot to get it done to clean? So if it cleans easily, it's going to make the person who's cleaning life easier because they'll be able to clean faster. If it looks better, it's going to actually make the house look better. Well, I did it faster, so that means I got more time. The house looks better, so now I feel better about how it looks. feeling better about how it looks maybe for several reasons. I might have kids, I might have a husband, I might have a wife, I might have people coming over. So it's really trying to dig into that deeper level and bring that out into the marketing, to the advertising, and be able to hit those touch points, and understanding where they are and also understanding where they aren't. And that's really like the kind of the gist of what you do when it comes down to being able to market online specifically.
Yeah. Y'all notice what he did. I told y'all he's sharp. He gave y'all just a little bit, just a little nugget, just a little bit. Y'all want the good. Y'all gonna have to go pony up, as they say, if y'all want the detail. No, seriously, I've seen Vincent take companies from, just fledgling, if you will, and just incorporate just a few concepts here and there. And the next thing you know, this fledgling company started to thrive. And I was always amazed at how that worked, because that's really not my space. But to see how you navigate that, as I said, and you do it so efficiently, those of you who are business owners, and toward the end of the podcast, we're certainly gonna give you a way to contact Vincent. But you want to make sure that if you have a business and you're not where you want to be, especially an industrial age type. And I say industrial, new age type business, especially when you can take advantage of digital technology, all these other things. You definitely want to reach out to him and see how he can help, you and your business. One of the things that that's I'm a big proponent of, not just in business. And again, we're talking about the state of the world, but I want to look at it, and I know we'll talk about this in a follow-up podcast. I know we kind of discussed this loosely in terms of mental health and how the mind is actually shaping all of this stuff that we're talking about around the world, the ideologies, the sociologies, the nationalism, racism, and all these other isms. A lot of this is mentally,
Right.
driven. But how has mental awareness, from your perspective, kind of evolved in recent years? I mean, because when I was younger, to talk about mental issues of any kind, mental health, mental awareness, anything, it was kind of taboo, especially for a black man, because as you said earlier, you're supposed to portray, and I got my air quotes up for those of you not looking, but you're supposed to portray strength and all these other things. But how has mental health awareness evolved over the recent years?
Wow. A lot, I would say. One of the things, one of the things that I talked about, with my men's group, was we talked about the quiet male, the strong, quiet male, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up around, the strong, quiet male. And the strong, quiet male just took it and
Mm-hmm.
just did. And what we're finding is, as we were growing up, was the strong, quiet male wasn't quite gonna work. There was
Mm-hmm.
the need for us to be expressive. And then what we also started finding out was you wanted us to be expressive, but then you didn't like what you were hearing.
Right.
So you were like, now I see why the strong, quiet male exists in the first place.
That's right. Right.
So, there's this pulling back and forth that was going on, but we started realizing, like society required us to talk more and to be more expressive. And we started seeing the negative side of the strong, quiet male. And so for me personally, I started going through like some mental work. And one of the things I had to think of that came to, I found this out, I was listening to this guy and he's like, your thoughts aren't real.
Mm,
And that was like, that just slapped me in the face. And I said,
right.
what? My thoughts aren't real. And he's like, just because you think it doesn't mean it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, we're in this society that's a slave to the mind. In other words, it's a slave to thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started making me think about, okay, well, if my thoughts aren't always real, that means I can like confirm them and verify if they match up with really what reality is.
Right.
And at that point, you when that happens, you start to get the awareness that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get this awareness of thought, you start to get, well, what's the awareness of the emotion, or what's the awareness of the feeling? And now you start to say, okay, I'm aware that these things exist. And once you have an awareness of them, I think there's an ability to say, okay, how do I need to respond to them, or how do I need to respond personally to what's going on? And so for me, my biggest revelation, I would say, of this year so far, probably part of 2024, was that my thoughts weren't real. And that just helped, because positively highs and then, the negative lows,
Mm-hmm.
at some point in time, you want to be able to put a balance in it and make sure like you can be on this even course. Because I'm like, yeah, some people love the highs, but like you have the extreme lows and you're no fun to be around.
An emotional
And
roller
so,
coaster.
right, exactly. So to me, that's what I thought about when it came down to mental health. The other portion that I have to think about, I think the other portion I really believe that has influenced us, and not just men, but I think everybody, and in a way that we aren't really aware of, is the media.
Mm.
And it's a couple of things when I think about with media. There was like, my parents' generation grew up as the news being Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the news said it, that was because it was true.
Right.
I'm in a generation where the news is quoting somebody's Twitter.
Right. Yep.
So it's just like the news is now going to social to put it up on TV. So it's just, there's a difference. And it's just like, you got to understand the news. Like the news now is designed to get eyeballs,
Mm-hmm.
and they're designed to do things where they're divisive and scare you. And, like one of the biggest things I've seen so far is debate shows.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Think about the debate show. The debate show was not a format when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
People came on and talked and had conversations. But
Right.
the debate shows where you got a panel of 6 people throwing ideas left and right. And then now everybody gets dramatic and people want to fight and other people want to cry.
Right.
And it's just like, what am I thinking? And the problem with it that I think is happening is it's influenced us to think everything's a debate.
Mm-hmm.
It's influenced us to think everything's a critique. Even in the sports world, the sports world is supposed to be pure. It's not. Everything's a
Right.
debate. It's LeBron versus Jordan.
Right.
It's like, why can't 2 be great? You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it's just, it becomes, and if you're seeing this every day in the world, I'm gonna put you against one another, put you against one another, put you against one another. It's your job to critique everything. It's your job to critique everything. Now we look at social, we see a post on social, we think we're supposed to critique it.
Mm-hmm.
We got to say our opinion of it. It's like, they didn't put that out there for your opinion.
Yep. Did y'all hear? Y'all heard that, right? Those of y'all who send me these nasty emails, y'all heard that, right? It ain't for y'all to just send y'all opinion. But I'm sorry, need that. I'm sorry.
Like, I didn't post for your opinion. I posted for somebody to get some joy and benefit out of it.
Right.
Like when I was growing up, they said, if you can't say something nice, just don't say nothing at all.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So the problem of it is, like, you feel like you're doing something by putting your critique out there.
Right.
Mind you, you're not doing anything but wasting breath.
Yeah.
Because the person who's creating is worried about creating, not worried about you.
That's right. Oh, that was deep.
So, and what happens is we've got this society or this generation of people who are like focused in the wrong areas. And sometimes I don't necessarily think it's their fault. I think it's they're just unaware that the way, from a social influence, it's designed that way. Like, the algorithms in social are designed to show you what you already have liked. Mm-hmm. So you're never going to see a counter perspective on social.
That's
so
crazy.
When somebody shows up giving you a counter perspective, you're like, what? I can't believe it. Like, no way. I've been looking at this for 200 days and never seen a different view. You're crazy. Da-da-da-da-da. It's like, bro, you've just been looking at the same hashtag for a whole year and didn't see the opposite hashtag that's existed, all because of your feed is jacked up. So
that's crazy.
That's just, we don't see it. We just, we just don't see it. We don't understand that it's happening to us. Like, we don't understand that the algorithms are designed to show us what we like, so we stay on it longer. And we have to have this ability to go seek or look for somebody that we disagree with. Mm-hmm. I went for a while. I used to watch, I would watch Candace Owens for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, what's wrong with you? I was like, bro, she's smart as I don't know what.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, do you hear how articulate she is? And they're like, do you know what she talks about? I'm like, why y'all so upset? Like,
Right.
watch and learn something and hear what she's saying. Because sometimes she says some stuff, I'm like, I ain't mad at you on that. Other times I'm like, what you talking about?
Right.
And so I think we've because of what we've seen, what we've been experiencing, we've kind of lost that ability to relate to somebody else who has a different perspective. And one of the reasons why I think we've lost that is because we don't have the ability to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and see where they're coming from.
Yeah. I think that's, man, you hit on something, and I never thought of it that way. But as you mentioned, technology and society is designed to continue to put things in front of you that you like, through algorithms and all these other technological advancements. But then you're right, you don't see a counter argument, if you will, to that particular thought. And it does. In fact, when I think about it, it probably contributes to tribalism, because everybody's seeing the things that they like. And like you said, nobody's getting an opportunity to see or listen to anything contrary, to their thoughts. So that's really something to kind of ponder. Man, I know we could talk forever. It's so much. We got to make sure that we have a couple of follow-up podcast just to kind of really dig even deeper into your thoughts and your mindset. Because we have a global audience, I kind of want to get out on this question. Uh, just so, what do you think? What gives you hope for the future of the world? Well, remember, we're talking about the state of the world, but what gives you? I know all of the bad things that are going on all over the globe, but what gives you hope for the future of the world, just from your standpoint?
So one of the things that gives me hope is, contrary to what the news says, people are not walking around killing each other. It's not chaos, right? Like you think about all of us, in America especially, like all of us can go to the store and buy a gun for 150, 200 bucks and go on a spree. We don't, like we don't. So I think that's one of the things. There's a sensibility of like, we're not going to just hurt one another.
Right.
And so that tells me like our normalcy, as far as our mechanisms, as far as how we're created, how we are wired, are really not wired to destroy. Right. Now we can be taught to destroy, but our normal mechanism, how we come out of the womb, we're not wired like that. Right. So, that gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope is like, if you think about history, I don't know if you guys paid attention in history class, but
nope.
There were some things like this that have happened in the past.
Right.
The other part that gives me hope is, there have been, when you see things go too far left or too far right, you often tend to see a rejection and a harsh rejection, where people tend to stand up and say, okay, I don't care what you are, what you think you are, how much you got, or how great you think you are. People tend to, it tends to be an uprising within people when things just really start to look grim.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the case as well. That gives me hope. Another thing that just gives me hope is, specifically for me, what gives me hope is just trying to like just stay in the word. There's one, I try to, pull verses in my brain and in my mind and say those things to myself as on a day in and day out basis, because it's easy to get caught up and get down about certain things. And that's another thing that gives me hope. I mean, another thing that gives me hope too is just, the interpersonal relationships, like, the people that believe in you. That's another way to get a ton of hope. You don't have to be so looking outward for something or something when, a lot of times what's right around you has the ability to give you hope. One of the things that I've done is times when I didn't believe in myself, I borrowed somebody else's belief.
Wow. That's
and
deep.
Yeah, I heard somebody say it, and I can't remember who I heard say it, but I was just like, when my mind would not allow me to believe, I just was like, okay, well, I'm not even going to fight with you. I'm just going, they said I could do it, so I'm going to try to do it.
Right. That's right. Yep. That's right.
And that gave me a ton of hope. And then something I got from you one time, you're talking about lack versus prosperity. What's your other words? It's lacking. What I'm missing? I'm missing a word. Oh,
I know one thing I said, if you don't attack your lack gonna attack you. I know that much.
lacking abundance. Lacking abundance. Abundance is
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
word I
yeah,
was.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
Abundance.
Yep.
And so, it's our default as humans is to focus on lack.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, even in leadership, our natural thing in leadership is to focus in on lack.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's something that we do naturally as leaders is focusing from a lack perspective.
That ain't my dog, y'all. That's Vincent dog. That ain't my dog, y'all. Here, keep going off in there.
I think he
I'm
sees
sorry.
somebody outside.
Okay, I'm all in your you going through your lack versus abundance, and I'm just all messing you up. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I didn't know how bad it was. I thought it was.
Oh yeah, we definitely hear you. We know you're an animal lover. Yeah,
He
but
sees
it's all
somebody.
good. Okay, it's all good.
So yeah, talking about abundance, right? It's really easy for us to focus on lack. Like our default can go to lack. We don't
Mm.
necessarily always go to abundance. We tend to focus on lack too
Mm-hmm.
much. And so if we could start to get our focus more so on the abundance of things, we'll be better off.
Right.
And from a leadership perspective, we, I think about parents, leaders, we have this natural inclination where we look at what's wrong
Mm-hmm.
and we make a big deal about what's wrong, right?
Right.
And I think we should talk about what's wrong, but we don't make a big enough deal about what's right.
Yep.
And one of the things that I learned from managing people, from studying really great basketball coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and from training dogs is the more you focus on what they've done right, the more likely they are to repeat the right behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger deal you make about what's wrong, the more they focus on not trying to be wrong.
Mm. And they continue being wrong.
Right. Because that's what you're
Yeah,
thinking about. That's what your
that's
brain
right.
is on. That's what your mind is on. And for yourself, if you're walking around every day thinking about everything you did wrong in
Mm-hmm.
your life, it really makes it hard to be right or even to feel right about yourself. And I can speak to that as like firsthand experience to where, when I say you default to lack, I'm talking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a training tool to kind of like get myself to go to abundance or even just get my brain to be like, we chilling with thoughts. We just doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're just gonna go and do. We're not worried about outcomes and now we just focus on what we're gonna do. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, that's really been that's how I find, like, to answer your question, that's a different ways of
Mm-hmm.
thinking about finding, like, how do you find hope in the world.
No, that's good, man. I tell you what, bro. I really appreciate all the wisdom that you've brought to the audience tonight. I know we got people making comments and a lot of things going on all over the world, but the wisdom that you brought, it's priceless. And I know I kid around a lot and we have fun with this, but at the end of the day, the state of the world is something that we have to take 100% seriously because it not only affects us, but it affects generations yet unborn. So we have a responsibility, to continue to speak our truth in terms of what the world looks like. But more importantly than that, just like you just said, not focus on the negative aspects of what's going on in the world, but let's look at the positive aspects of what's happening. And then how can we take those positive behaviors and truly make the world a better place for that next generation? So I'm encouraged, even in the midst of everything else, I'm encouraged. I really appreciate everything that you brought to the podcast tonight. If you don't mind, just share a little bit about how someone can contact you, if you so choose, whether it's your Instagram or whatever it is. Just kind of let them know how they can reach out to you and how we can
Sure.
stay connected.
Yep, you can reach out via Instagram and TikTok. The handle is Vincent S City, like Vincent's apostrophe S City, but it's Vincent letter S City on Instagram and on TikTok. You can reach out to me there.
Okay, Vincent S City. Y'all make sure y'all reach out. He has really given you a lot of things to think about, but a lot of wisdom, a lot of tools that you can actually go out and use. I know we're going to be doing some other podcasts in terms of really diving into the issues of mental health in the community and just so many other things. Again, there's never enough time for somebody with so much knowledge and wisdom. All of our guests, all of our listeners who are around the world, I certainly want to give it up to Vincent. He's given an incredible amount of his wisdom to all of us, doing a great job. We're looking forward to having you back again. Thank you so much, Vincent. Thank you, my brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nothing
Appreciate it.
but love here. And for everybody else, guys, look, take this episode, whether you're watching it live, and again, I know it's late. We've been on almost an hour. So our friend, I had to look at Sophie Jensen in Denmark. Those of y'all having this live party. It's almost, I guess, 2 a.m. there. So thank you guys for really hanging in there with us. I'm sure you were empowered by Vincent tonight, and all of our listeners all over the world. Thank you so much. I cannot express enough how much I appreciate everything that you do every single week to keep the podcast going and keep us, really pushing our messages of empowerment forward. Don't forget to like, subscribe, download, and share. You can actually go to the website, the deepdivepodcast.live. You can we have over 100 episodes, 150 episodes. So go back and, listen to some of the episodes that may be relevant to what you're dealing with right now, and share those episodes with other people. We're on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, 22 different podcast platforms, as well as One Voice Radio around the world. With that, guys, thank you so much. Vincent, once again, thank you for being a special guest for tonight and bringing all the wisdom. Looking forward to having you back again. Anything you need to say, Vincent, before we get out of here?
This is fun. We should do it again. I'm having a good time. So looking forward to doing it.
Let's do it. I'm ready. All right. And just like we say, let's get it, baby. Y'all have a great night. God bless, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.
I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it. This ain't a front. Glory to G-O-D. It's what you could do with a mustard seed. It's what you could do when you start to believe. Take fear and you cast it inside of the sea. 100% out of me, cause he gave it all on the tee when he let it bleed. So what is you saying to me? You just insecure about the love that turned me to a... I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I just know that I'ma get it. 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 I'ma